My relationship with Frog Hollow has been really nothing but positive. It's been a good experience for me. Living in Vermont, here in Vermont, I appreciate having them, having the proximity, being close to them, and having this ongoing relationship with them and getting feedback from them. That's been great. I'm forever impressed as I travel the world and travel around the United States and go to galleries, go to craft galleries. I'm more and more impressed at what Frog Hollow has to offer and the consistency of the quality there.
I think Frog Hollow really, really works for its artists, and I love that there are these three great galleries that show the work of Vermont artists. I think it's good for Vermont artists to come and see all the different possibilities of what art is happening in the state.
I honestly really love working with Frog Hollow. It's really nice to be associated with a craft center that has high quality of standards of teaching, and gallery as well. The work in the galleries represents, I think, Vermont artists very well.
I decided I wanted to be a wood turner when I realized I wanted to work for myself. I really have an appreciation for wood. I love wood and I love form, and I just see, actually over the years traveling with my wife, I've seen a lot of beautiful wood turning, actually in New Zealand and Australia back when we first got married, and I said, gee, someday I'd really like to do that. I grew up in northern Minnesota. My wife and I actually moved to Vermont in 1989 to lead bicycle tours for Vermont country cyclers. In 1992 is when I decided that I wanted to turn wood for a living, and I went and I took a 3-day course from a master wood turner in Pennsylvania. And from there, with this wood turner, I learned the basics of wood turning, a real good kind of foundational course. And from there, I've developed the systems that I employ for turning. I decided I wanted to be a wood turner when I realized I wanted to work for myself. I really have an appreciation for wood. I love wood and I love form, and I just see, actually over the years traveling with my wife, I've seen a lot of beautiful wood turning, actually in New Zealand and Australia back when we first got married, and I said, gee, I, someday I'd really like to do that. My grandfather, my mother's father, was really a fine sculptor and a fine man, and really I grew up in the same town that he lived in, and so I had a lot of interaction with him and a lot of really great experiences in his wood shop, cleaning the shavings out of his bandsaw and making things with him, watching him turn on the lathe, and smelling the smells of wood, and he's definitely influenced me to do what I'm doing now. I take a quote from a friend of mine, a fellow wood turner, and he says, I don't make a living turning wood, I just live on what I make. But indeed, I'm making a living. It's been good. It's really, should I say, satisfying or fulfilling to have people want to buy my work, and I sell everything that I make. I'm definitely inspired by ceramicists, ceramic form. I'm inspired by, glass as well. But I have to say that, Michelangelo, some of the really fine work that I see in bronze. I spend a lot of time in Italy, where my wife works spring and fall. So I get to go there, and bronze, marble work. I get a lot of inspiration actually from nature. Going to look at the vegetables and the fruit at the grocery store. Frog Hollow was the second gallery, I think, that I applied to and that accepted my work back in, I think it was 1993. It's great exposure, again, having my work displayed with high quality work done by, other artists and craftspeople. One thing about my work, and this work that I get to do, is that because I turn relatively few pieces, each piece is unique in its personal history as well as the end result. Each piece is unique in its personal history, and I have a lot of really great memories of finding wood in interesting places, finding wood alongside the road, or finding wood that was headed to be destined to be burned in someone's fireplace. You know, finding burls and pieces that many times would have been discarded or would be, as I said, would have been burned, or you know, finding a root burl that was dug up by a, you know, bulldozer when they were clearing an area to make a pond, and finding this burl that was actually underground, and then cleaning it off and getting it on the lathe and finding just this hidden beauty in there. I really enjoy that. I enjoy taking a beautiful old twisted, you know, really gnarly piece of maybe the butt log from a maple tree and getting 30 bowls out of it, getting 30 pieces out of this thing and counting and knowing what I got out of it. It's really a thrill for me to take wood, wood that many times wouldn't be used otherwise. I just got a piece the other day, a piece of a black cherry burl that someone had sitting in their firewood pile. They knew that they couldn't split it and get it in their stove. And to take that really rough, in many ways waste material, and turn something really valuable, turn something that someone is glad to purchase, to take home and value, hopefully for decades. It's like finding a diamond in the rough. It's like finding that, you know, finding that rare jewel that maybe many people wouldn't see the value in it, and I get to take it and kind of breathe life into it and on the lathe.
I grew up in Ohio on a farm, my father's farm, picking strawberries with the migrant workers that came. So I learned about work ethics and you know, sticking to the task growing up. But I painted as much as I could. I lived in Boston for a while and studied art with a Japanese master. When I became pregnant, I moved with my husband up here because Boston didn't seem quite like the right place to raise kids. So we came, we sold our 10-speed bicycles and bought a truck, and I put my loom in that truck. My grandmother had died a couple years earlier, and with a very small inheritance from her, I purchased that loom. And it came up with me in the truck, and I started weaving mostly rag rugs and small baby clothes for the kids that came about, and home textiles. It seemed easier to earn my living as a weaver than as a painter raising kids. I think everyone has art within them. I think that it just is a case of dropping the fears that you can't do it right and just go for it, and empty yourself of all the preconceptions of what it could be and just let it flow out from the center. My grandmother claims that I was using crayons at 9 months, and I painted as soon as paints were given to me. I've been messing around with dyes for a lot of years. I dyed yarns and dyed clothing. I dyed baby clothes because I didn't want my kids wearing pinks and blues, so they all became odd greens. So I've been dyeing for a lot of years. I didn't know how to stretch the canvases on a padded tabletop until I went to the North Country Studio Conference. And there, Nick Cave was doing that process, and it just seemed so wonderful because all of a sudden my 45-inch squares became canvases, and I could really act as they were paintings rather than the tie-dyes that I had been doing or the dip dyeings that were more random. So that was 5 years ago that I really officially padded the tabletops, built the steamer, and got started with the dyeing of silk scarves. I've always felt like the best way for me to make a living was through my art because it felt like it was what I did best. I did get a teaching certificate when I was in college as I was studying painting, and for 1 year I taught many, I think it was 300 7th and 8th graders in that school, but I found that I was giving all myself to the teaching process and not my own art. So I only taught for 1 year and then collected works of art that I really enjoyed by people I had gone to school with and started an art gallery in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I didn't think I was the artist at that point. I thought maybe I could be the promoter. But the art that I had to do still felt too important, so I didn't do that too long and that's when I went to live in Boston and studied with the Japanese master. That was 25 years ago, and I came to Vermont 25 years ago and was weaving at that point. I get inspiration from certainly the colors in nature around me. I love to look at rocks. I love landscapes. People say in the autumn after the beautiful brilliant colors go, oh, it's just brown out there, and I am so intrigued by the pinks that I see and the subtle browns. I pull the color out of the dullness and see it. I'm definitely inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe with her images and her way of looking at colors. Different artists inspire me. I went to see a show of Dagmar Nickerson's paintings, and I walked in the room. They glowed, and I carried that glow back here. I heard a song then, Lady in Red, and from the paintings that I had seen, that was a dazzling red that came to mind, and the song Lady in Red, I came back and did a couple of red scarves, because it just, and actually one of them even has the face of the Lady in Red within it. I became a member of Frog Hollow, gosh, many years ago, before there was Frog Hollow Burlington or Frog Hollow Manchester. I put my work in Middlebury, the chenille scarves, the hats, and some cotton clothing that I was making probably 18 or 20 years ago.
I remember as an undergraduate, I had this goal, and I don't know where this goal came from, that when I was 30, I wanted to be set up and have a studio, be making pots full-time and earning a living at it. And I turned 30 this past February, so, you know, it's like, yeah, I made that goal. And I just finished building a kiln out back here. It's sort of the first kiln that we've had right outside our back door. I grew up, for the most part, in Michigan, in the suburbs of Detroit. But, I mean, that was where I grew up for the most part, but I moved around quite a bit. I was born in Australia, lived in Montreal for 5 years, lived in New Jersey for 5 years, and then ended up in the suburbs of Detroit, mainly because my dad works for an automotive company, so that sort of made sense. my wife and I, we were living in Montana at the time when a job opportunity came up with Frog Hollow in Manchester as the resident potter position. So actually we both applied, we both wanted to share the position, and I didn't get the job, but she did, which was fine, just because we've supported each other all the way, and we've sort of moved to different places to support each other's sort of professional career. So that brought us specifically to Vermont, and we found Middletown Springs because the education coordinator for Frog Hollow at the time lived in Middletown Springs, and so Diane got connected into this community, and we knew we didn't want to live in Manchester, and we wanted to live more out in the country. So that's how we came to Middletown. I took a pottery class in high school, and it clicked with me, and I stuck with it. I had a very supportive high school teacher, and she encouraged me to go to art school, and so that's what I did. I graduated undergraduate school in 1992, and I've been making my living teaching and making pots since then, so that's 8 years. My wife inspires me. She works really hard. She's in the studio every day, so it's that helps me. I see her working really hard, and it sort of brings out a strong work ethic in myself. But there are just so many good artists, good potters out there that inspire me. It would be really hard to say, but I've had the good fortune of having really good instructors, good teachers. So. Those types of people, and it's also the potters who are making a living on their pots. They're the ones that really inspire me, not the ones that have university jobs per se, but the ones who are making really good work and make a good living at it. I really do believe in that. You should make the work that you want to make, and not make the work that you think will sell. I mean, ultimately that's going to make you miserable. I just make the forms that I like. I look at pots that I like from historical models, and I use that to sort of guide me as to what it is that I want to make. Words of inspiration, go for it. You know, that's really about it. I think that if your heart is in it, I think that there's always a way of making it work, and you just have to stick with it. Is what it really comes down to, and set goals. I've been with Frog Hollows for going on 4 years. They employ me to run the studio down there, so again, sort of monetarily, it's helped out that way. And through sales at the gallery, you know, I'm represented in the Burlington, the Middlebury, and the Manchester gallery, so a lot of people get to see my work, which is really beneficial. You know, it's hard not to come to Vermont and not see my work if anyone's gone to any of those towns, which are, you know, most of them are major destinations.